Good evening, everyone. James Hancock here. I'm in an absolutely fantastic mood, and it's going to be my genuine pleasure serving up my review for Deadwood, the movie. This sort of thing almost never happens where diehard fans of a show that was prematurely cut short are given an opportunity to see their beloved show given a proper send-off many years after the fact. Deadwood ran 3 seasons from 2004 to 2006, and I think that it's not only one of the finest shows HBO has ever produced. There's an easy case to be made for Deadwood as the strongest Western on the big or small screen in the 21st century. Rarely have I seen the poetic and the savage stirred together to such delicious effect. There's something about a town where the pork has a suspiciously human aftertaste, where even the most vile characters speak like someone right out of a William Faulkner novel that I just can't resist. But it's not as if Western fans in the 21st century have had a lot of options to choose from. The great heyday of the genre was pretty much from the late 30s through the early 70s, but there are obvious exceptions to that generalization. Look no further than some recent movies like Django Unchained, The Hateful Eight, Bone Tomahawk, and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, 4 wildly different movies, which I think are all very worthy recent additions to the Western genre. But as a fanatic for Westerns, I very rarely get a chance to discuss them on this channel, in that this channel is primarily devoted to covering new releases in film and television. Suffice to say, it is a pleasure and a privilege to report that Deadwood the movie has made me a very happy viewer. I'm just happy this guy made it all. Creator David Milch recently got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and apparently True Detective creator Nick Pizzolatto stepped in to help him with some of the writing duties. Milch, in turn, helped out on Season 3 of True Detective. But in the director's chair, we have Daniel Minahan, who directed 4 episodes back in the day. But of course, the real thrill is seeing so many cast members back in the roles that they'll be remembered for the rest of their careers. Sadly, actors Powers Booth, Ricky Jay, and Ralph Richardson have all pushed on since Season 3, but pretty much everyone else is back apart from Titus Welliver, who had a scheduling conflict due to Bosch. I won't make the claim that each character gets equal opportunities to shine, or that they all have equally great character beats, but goddamn, the story sure comes close. The story picks up in 1889 with South Dakota about to become the 40th state. George Hearst, who's now a senator in California, has returned to town to make a few speeches, but he also wants to buy up a lot more land for some telephone poles that he's installing in the area. From the word go, we can see how much the land has changed. As we hear the signature opening tune, instead of the typical credits, we see a giant train rolling into town carrying lumber. The town is still muddy and disgusting, but there's a public phone where folks line up for the chance to talk with the outside world. Deadwood is a very different place. The problems get underway when Charlie Utter refuses to sell his land to Hearst, resulting in his murder, which is kind of sort of witnessed by Samuel Fields, a man whose nickname I won't repeat because it might get my channel banned, but you know who I'm talking about. And as Hearst and his men try to cover their tracks, Marshall Bullock is given some great opportunities to do what he does best. Complicating matters is the fact that Hearst now realizes that Trixie was not in fact killed after shooting him, but is now in fact expecting a baby and about to marry Saul. And just at a time where a ruthless Al Swearingen operating at the height of his powers would be most useful, years of boozing have finally caught up with him, and he's suddenly seeming like a very sick old man with a rotten liver, barely able to walk down the stairs to his own saloon. So this is definitely a rich brew of dramatic possibilities, the only drawback being the length. With less than a 2-hour running time, the film is heartbreakingly short. Having 3 full seasons beforehand gave the original show such incredible opportunities to capture the laid-back pace of this time and place, but beggars can't be choosers, and I'll take this final chapter over nothing at all. Stylistically, one of my favorite ingredients was how the movie chose to incorporate flashbacks from the first 3 seasons without wallowing in sentimentality. This movie could have easily been overwhelmed with a walk down memory lane, but the flashbacks not only remind us of how savage this camp used to be, but also some of the most tender moments like the love affair between Bullock and Alma Ellsworth. It always broke my heart that they didn't end up together, and clearly there's still a lot of fire between them from the way they dance and embrace in heartbreakingly brief moments in the story. And without becoming a straight-up action movie, Deadwood the movie does give us some juicy, tense scenes where characters like Bullock, Johnny, Dan, and Saul all get to remind us what they're made of. They interrupt an attempted lynching of Samuel Fields, they face off against Hearst's men outside of his hotel, and in probably the best action beat, Calamity Jane mows down one of Bullock's own men, who's about to betray him and shoot him in the back. Bullock's best beat is probably when he saves Woo's grandson from one of Hearst's men and orders the body to be fed to Woo's pigs. I was riveted pretty much throughout all of these scenes, but best of all were the last few minutes, where I just felt waves of chills all over my body. We see Trixie looking after Al, who earlier that night walked her down the aisle at her wedding. And as Trixie begins reciting the Lord's Prayer, Al mutters, "Let him fucking stay there." We don't know for sure that Al is pushed on, but it seems to fit for the story. And for me, Al is always the heart and soul of this show, and giving him a proper death scene is the perfect way to draw the story to a close. So I have no idea how this movie is going to play with folks who are not already fans, but obviously this was not made for them. The good news is that the unconverted have 3 insanely cool seasons of television to look forward to before checking out this movie, one that amounts to an epilogue to that show's sprawling narrative. But if you've already watched Deadwood several times over and need some fresh meat to sink your teeth into, I do want to offer some quick suggestions on this front. Moving from the distant past to some more recent fare, here are a few highlights to get you started in the Western genre. I'd suggest John Ford's Stagecoach, My Darling Clementine, Fort Apache and the Searchers, Howard Hawks' Red River and Rio Bravo, Anthony Mann's The Furies, The Naked Spur, The Far Country and The Man from Laramie, Bud Bedeker's Tall Tea and Ride Lonesome, Sergio Leone's Dollars Trilogy, as well as Once Upon a Time in the West, Sergio Corbucci's The Great Silence and Mercenaries, and my favorite, Sam Peckinpah, where I suggest you start with The Wild Bunch and then pretty much watch all of his other westerns, in particular Ride the High Country, Ballad of Cable Hogue, and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. All of these directors have more westerns than I've mentioned, but this would be a great way to get started on some classic westerns. Also, I might as well toss in Larry McMurtry's highly addictive Lonesome Dove, as well as Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. Also, if you guys have any suggestions on this front, definitely send them my way. So I think that's about all I have to say for now. I'm actually in the mood to watch Deadwood the movie all over again, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this sucker up. But I hope you enjoyed my reaction and review. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to talk about westerns, hunt me down on Twitter at Colbrax, or just leave me a comment in the comments below. But can't thank you enough for watching my video. I appreciate the support, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.